The time has come to upgrade this standard 33 by 22 kitchen sink. So I'm so glad it is the standard, and it'll basically hopefully hot swap out of here, meaning I'm going to let go of the counter all the way around from underneath and the drain, and I'm going to lift this out and leave the faucet connected to it for the time being. I want that faucet for upstairs, but for now we'll get everything out, because behind, in this area between the wall of the sink and the wall, up and around underneath there, is a really difficult place to try and work, to try and get something to become unattached. With the two basins and the two drains, it's pretty slim on the left, but on the right-hand side is the entire garbage disposal. And so we're going to move to a single drain in the center, single basin. And I did see some where the faucet's to the right-hand side, which may have put it more in the center position under these cabinets and window, which it's too bad it didn't work out there perfectly. I could have cut the whole opening and everything over more, but it would have wildly reduced the amount of surface area right between the sink and the stove, which was kind of well worth keeping, obviously. And I gave it about the same. I think it is centered in this cabinet, potentially. This is a 24-inch piece of equipment that's a 24-inch cabinet, and then there's a bit of wall thickness after it, so it must be a little off-center because we haven't got that down here. We just have a bit of counter overhang. But the point is, two work areas over this stretch of cabinet, or stretch of counter, over a sink base, a piece of equipment, and a regular cabinet, put me there. And then moving everybody down to get under this window would have shoved the stove over in front of this window, and trying to move the window, which I put in when I built this kitchen, over more to be center, would have squeezed out the ability to have an upper cabinet here, because that window was here and I was going to keep it, and I did keep it. I did get rid of the door that was under it because there was a door right there. So long story short, how quickly, if it's almost 9, we're going to start this by 10. So I'm just getting preemptive here. I've cleared a few things off of there. This has 2 holes at 8-inch centers, at least, if it doesn't have a hole for this too. And it had a hole here for like a pull-out spray nozzle, which currently starts and stops the garbage disposal. So what are we going to put in there? Well, I got a 22 by 33 replacement single basin composite. I think it's granite or quartz composite. It's a little sparkly there. It's got a little bit of a gloss, but it would be considered satin. And we've got a high-end, I believe it's Kohler. I forget the actual one, but it's a nice single opening, because this could be drilled for the 8-inch centers. You could put another piece of equipment here or there. So they mark those locations, and there's little leads underneath if we need to drill them. But they've never been drilled, even though this was secondhand. So this is a $300 sink, roughly $250. What is this? Black quartz top mount 3322 by 9. Karen, which I think, don't be a Karen, is a Home Depot or a Lowe's. So nothing terribly special, but the faucet and the corresponding basket are higher end Kohler from the, bath showroom. Yeah, that's nice stuff. That's a really nice basket. So we're going dune style, I think, with the color scheme. This has got a pull-out dongle do. This is the exact same faucet that I put in the kitchen replacement video, and I did for a friend last year. I think we knocked that out. So at the time, they paid full price for this. Best full price you could get. MSRP is around $1,000. I think they paid $8.5. And then the showroom had one that they were removing to put something else on view. It had been installed in the showroom, and so she didn't need anything but their cost on that to get it out of there. So I got this faucet for like $200 cash, ready to connect, never been hooked up before. And the way that had been installed in the showroom, it hadn't had all this stuff cut, which in some cases they're installed to like a clear piece of acrylic. Everything's cut off, can't be used. So it doesn't work for every case. But I got a screaming deal on that. This I got for $100 secondhand because it has this little blemish. Can you see it? Oh no! And it goes down in here a little bit, but it is not a fracture. It's a wrinkle. And there's one, I think, right here too. They're little idiosyncrasies either in the mold or shrinkage or something, but it doesn't persist through the whole thing, and it certainly hasn't been hairline fractured, and it won't be a big deal. So for about $300 cost, this equipment, down from what would have been more like, I don't know, conservatively $1,000 anyway. $1,200 more likely when you pay taxes and all that stuff. We're going to pull this, set it in there. I'm going to put that faucet on that sink just the way this one's going to stay when it comes out. And we're just going to zoop it down in there. And we'll see what kind of attachment. I think it'll probably just get a bead of silicone around the edge. And we'll blend that. And we'll go from there. And then we got to get this faucet off and try to take it upstairs. But more importantly, how quickly can we do a switcheroo? The garbage disposal will go onto this singular drain. It'll be in the middle and largely out of the way, and so we'll have two like more spacious cavities. You know, the question will be, am I up for, whatever is this, am I up for fixing my S-trap with my additional vent that's in the way? This is my dad's kind of fabrication here, and these stand right in the middle of the cupboard in the way. They're probably going to be in the way of the garbage disposal. So that's where this is going to go south, is that the water supply is likely going to have to be reconstructed to some degree. It's well inside of the outside wall, so it doesn't ever freeze and break. This is the dishwasher supply, but it isn't really what you want now. So we shall see what kind of a debacle that becomes. But good news, I'll be able to work up and over rather than having to stand on my head to get underneath to deal with it. And so we'll get that fixed and hopefully get the sink in afterwards. So this won't be as much fun as I thought it would be, and it won't be as quick as I thought it would be. But it will, once I begin, have to go over the finish line because we use this kitchen. Well, it's been an hour, and I've got the tools I need around. I got the stuff cleared out from underneath the sink, the area cleared away. I got a nice rag towel. I got the water drained out of the trap, and I got the garbage disposal taken care of. So, you know, that stuff. I got a light. All that stuff has to happen in and around doing some other things. So I'm getting a bit of a later start. However, I got that stuff in a hot bucket of water with Dawn soap so it can sit. Oh, and I filled the garbage disposal with hot water and Dawn soap so it can sit for a little while and marinate. Well, believe it or not, it's time for another episode of Scope Creep, 1963 Davis Road edition. And this has been wrong for some time now. My dad built this for me to get me up and running here, so that was nice of him. But the sink was tagged in with some steel plumber tape, the perforated type, with a couple of drywall screws on the ends of it here because we didn't have any clamps, I guess. So bonus, it was easy to remove. Everything else was just a thicker bead of caulking. But this air admittance valve was added later because I had what I thought was drainage problems that were related to a lack of a vent, but that wasn't the drainage problem that we had. So I just left it, but now it's going to be right in the middle practically of the stub end of my faucet coming through my sink. So it would have to get cut down. See the other end of this. It's going to be in the way of all that. So it would need to get cut down anyway, and there shouldn't be any more S-traps, which is what this is. It falls out, it technically falls out, goes up and over and then down through the floor straight, and then turns, which shouldn't be the case anymore. It should be a P-trap. It should just go through one trap and then roll along horizontally and then over the edge into the wall and down. And if it has to turn there and come back over to jump into this drain again, so be it. But to start with, that rough plumbing ends at the wall behind the sink base. So there's no perforations to the sink base other than the back wall, if there is one at all. And the water should come out of the back wall as well. So I'm going to try to make that the case. I don't want the hot and cold water above the conduit here. It's not ideal for there to be conduit here, but I'm going to try to leave that whole situation alone because it does power our countertop and our dishwasher, and the stove is on that, I want to say. No, there's no electricity to the stove, sorry. But there's this whole ugly setup here that I need to redo the electricity some point. For now, we're going to stay away from it and just stick to the plumbing. Let's go down in the basement and have a look at this situation. So, as nice and dry as it is for the most part, especially in this area right here, right over here in the puddle is where I've got to be. Where did we deduce? No, it's right here in front of this on the pile of random stuff that's been collected down here. So I had to cut my way out for the dryer vent last year, I think, or the year before maybe. And so I can see more clearly the amount of plate and stuff that's on this super thick wall, because believe it or not, that's where the center line of that cabinet is. So the center line of the drain is 12 inches from the face of the finished wall inside, and then there's the thickness of that finished wall. So, you know, this is just dirt on the other side of this glass block, because it's probably another foot from the face of this. Ooh, and that's broken. Interesting. To the actual face of the finished building outside. So this is why it was probably built here. It's about as far as it's easy to build without having to do this, which is what we're going to basically end up doing now. And we're only going to do this because we're right on top of this window well. Otherwise, I wouldn't be trying to do this anywhere else. So we're going to cut the other end of this section that's already been compromised off of here. Over here, I'm going to disconnect this scab plywood or whatever Dad used there, and he's got some copper that he built to get connected there. That's all going to be taken back down and away. This will be the 2-inch line that we use and plumb back into, but since this dryer's here, it's a stacked washer dryer unit, there's also a washer that drains here, but that amounts to a vent stack. So we'll be well vented now more than ever before. And again, I don't think the lack of a vent was the reason that it didn't justify putting the air admittance valve in before, because it wasn't really my problem anyway. So we'll have a decent new vent on this line over here. It's a bigger line than you really need until you add the washer. Then it doesn't need to be 2-inch. This only needed to be 1.5 inches, and it's 2. So I'm going to try to cut this plate down in a way. Looks like the insulation doesn't go up all the way across anyway. Pull that down, pull everything out of my face, and then cut a big enough hole in the subfloor to be looking up into the finished wall somewhere and be able to operate up into the finished wall. And then I'll go up into the cabinet back, or there's no back to that cabinet, but I'll go up and drill out through the wall and place the holes right where I want them. And I'm going to try to work between them and the opening downstairs in the basement and get them installed up in there doing surgery, so that when we're done, and I'll do 200 trips through here. I rolled up this rug, but it's just going to have basement filth. So will this? I'll have to put some cardboard to walk on here, and the cats will be trying to get into the basement the whole time. So I'll drill through here and below the conduit to the right and the left. And all the closer to the floor I get, the easier it'll be to get things installed. So I don't know if I'll even be above the conduit with the drain out, although it would make a lot of sense to do that. So that will mean that none of this will be in this situation anymore. They won't exist in this space. I'll be able to throw a nice sink base liner tray, plastic, into this cabinet. It'll cover those openings in the bottom of the cabinet. The cabinet's otherwise in nice shape. Left and right will look halfway decent. Yeah, the dishwasher and stuff, the drain comes out here, but it'll tuck right in to the new situation cleanly, and the water line will go into the new situation cleanly at the back wall, and everything will be way more spacious and professional, and then we can put the new sink and stuff in. All right, this is pretty awesome. This stud, if you follow the body line that it's on right up here, that will mean that this, when I installed this window, I installed to the side of that stud, which is why this cavity is full of loose insulation. When this was open, we poured as much down into the wall here as we could, just as in this other area that we fixed this way. You can notice the slight square repair there. That got filled because there was a restaurant fan opening in the wall there that we filled. So I know now that I can stick a flanged copper stub out on the left-hand side of this stud and get one water connection there, and I can stick the other flanged stub out to the back of what's left of these 1-inch boards and attach it here, even though it kind of broke out. I'm going to have to make a glue repair there because when I pulled the boards out, they broke in half. And then right through here, on the right-hand side of this stud, that'll be where the drain goes down. So what I'll be able to do is plot out, and this stud is an actual 5, I want to say, in this empty cavity that's like the rest of the building is, to the back of the sheathing, and around whatever piece of random wood that is 5 inches. Just a little under 5 inches. So, that little random piece of wood notwithstanding. That means that I can locate this place next to the stud and however far to the wall surface plus whatever much there, and drill a giant hole saw hole up from below, and then I can vacuum out just enough insulation to get the PVC routed down and around and there, and I can get the water supplies in, and then I will just drill through the appropriate openings on these boards for clearance before I anchor them back in to pack up the wall thickness, and then I'll throw those 3 pieces of beadboard back in, and it'll look really nice. One of the things I'm realizing, though, is the cold air coming through here is going to be problematic when it comes to freezing that water. I really would be better off, and I had been thinking I would see enough through my wall opening here, but I immediately went down in size to go with the boards that naturally started and finished here and everything else, just enough room. I thought I might be able to put styrofoam in to insulate, but I really need to think about how I want to insulate. I may need to get into this box. Well, I was going to say make it loose enough to take one more piece out and remove a little more wood and work more effectively into that space. But it's trapped on the conduit here with this cabinet installation. And if I start moving these cabinets and stuff, I'm really going to increase the scope. So I'd like to, once again, leave the electrical intact. So I'm going to have to figure out a way to feel better about the water line in that side. Unless I were to put them one above the other on this side. Maybe I'll do that. 1, 2, drain, leave that insulated, which is far more comfortable for the water to be on this side of it. That might be a best case scenario. So we'll see, but let's get in the basement and cut that plate out. Well, you can't beat a really nice Sawzall. Boy, this thing has gone the distance for me. Now I got a 12 amp hour HD battery for it. I've also had it rebuilt, so I guess this battery's about dead. So there's pros and cons, right? Anyway, I got through the first layer, and I'm going to work on the second layer quick. If I get to that end of it, that piece will come out, and then it'll be clear sailing where I need to get to here, I think. All right, so the tricky part is how to make our hole that we drill from below in the right place. So I found the center line. Now there's this big crack. Where are we here? there's this big crack that goes from kind of the center of the hole and it goes over to the rim joist. And I was about to do it myself. You know, let's use that to basically put that center line of that pipe there. Well, it isn't. See, the center line of the fitting is actually that little nipple, that little tit thing there. That's going to be on the center line of the elbow. So I moved over and I used a square on the rim joist, like this. And I put this pencil line on here, and you can see right to start with how much further the center line of that is. Anyway, I've got a center line at 90 off the face of this. Isn't the rim joist, this is the secondary. It's on the inner side. There's an outer rim. This is like a redundant joist. But the point is, I have this much room to drill in. I'm not going to cut through that any further. And so I can measure from the center line the other way of this fitting now, down to the face of the wall, and then over to the center line of the wall upstairs, using some math. We'll do this up there. And then we'll know how far to come down here, how far to measure off the center line of the pipe, down the pencil mark, and then what size hole we can drill. We want to drill the biggest size hole that isn't going to scrub into the back of that faux joist, because that's annoying. So I was hoping for a 5-inch, but I think it's going to have to be smaller. But let's go measure upstairs and find out. So I'm going to do this quickly, but you notice I put the square against the wall's face, so I know that these lines out here are at 90 degrees to that wall, and I slid it over and was able to stop against the pipe down there. But what I noticed immediately was, and I don't know if this will track on screen, but when I line up all the circles that are in this vertical here visually, that puts the edge of my square on the edge of this piece of pipe here, which is, you know, the one that we're trying to line up. That's currently where the route goes. And so if I were to move over in the wall, all of a sudden when I'm coming back to the current plumbing, I'm coming in at a harsher angle of an attack. Now you're allowed a little bit of degrees of freedom into the socket weld like that when you glue it, but not a lot. So I'm going to want to be as close to here as I can get. And so again, if I'm looking at the fact that this just visually ends up coincidentally on that edge, I know that an 1.5-inch pipe, which is what this is, measures at about actually 2, since it's 1.5 inch inside and it's a little under 1/4 inch wall thickness on either side of skid 40. So the overall diameter is about 2. So if it's just about lined up right here, that means to 1 inch is the center line, which means down here at 1 inch is the center line. Look at how 1 inch ends up really darn good, really close to this body line in the wall. And if you bring that up, look at that. It's right at the edge of that stud. So we could say that the center line of this PVC downstairs, as taken to the wall with that pencil mark in the basement, that is actually the edge of the stud. So if we start with our hole saw brushing into that pencil line, we'll be in good shape when it comes to making a clearance hole here. And then the other thing we need to know is from the face of this pipe, or I'm sorry, the center line of this plumbing pipe, which we said was about, looks like it's 12, almost exactly. It's a little shy. These tangential connections come in on the exact center line. So where that body line is, where this little route and this little route line up, that's the center line of that. So it's a little bit over. If I go to the face of the finished material, it's, man, is it really close to, but it's a little bit over. So it's like 12.25. And then we've got 1-inch boards, and we've got 3/8 material as well. So it's 13.25, 3/8 is 5/8. You're basically at 14 inches. And we can test that by hooking on the back of that material and coming out here to what looks like 14 inches is right on this center line. So 14 inches it begins, and the center line is right on the edge of the stud. So let's take that information downstairs and plot out what we got for a circle that we can cut. 14 by whatever that diameter can be. Its radius will be what we scrub the stud with. And then we just get to find out how many layers of boards we have to drill through with that hole saw. Well, I ended up choosing the smallest hole saw that it's never cut a hole before. I could tell by the paint. It's going to be nice and sharp because I don't really want to deal with a bunch of BS right here. So I'm just a skosh into my pencil line. I'm just a skosh into that joist because I got to come some kind of an angle here getting into the window well and up. This is another case of how you'd never get this done anywhere but the window well. So it's just lucky that we're here over a window well. So now I just got to push and make sure I get through all of the wood and start seeing some insulation. And then I think I'm going to go upstairs and use the shop vac to try to snorkel suck right down to here until there's nothing, and then try to rebuild plastic PVC right back up and get it on this center line so I can maybe cut this here, take that out, and then put a new piece on and reconnect here right before the clean out. We'll see. All right, I've gotten a layer out of there, but there's going to be another layer of boards, and then it's going to be, at least, if that's not the plate right there, I don't know. But this isn't going to be quite deep enough to get through the plate itself, let alone with a layer of boards. So what we're doing is we're not able to drill deep enough here. So I'm going to use a little trick where I've got my larger self-feeding, like plumber's Forstner. So that will follow that center hole, and it'll drill itself right along until you actually get through everything. And then, because there's a registration surface already in these boards for the outside diameter of this hole saw, despite the fact that I've cored this right out and there's no lead hole to keep it centered with this drill, it will center on the outside of the hole saw in those boards, and I can finish the cut deeper. And then as I need to, and I'm going to run into this small surface that's left with the bottom of the hole saw, you say, well, then I can reach up with something like a cat's paw into the outside cut and pull over, and that'll just snap off. It'll be a small, thin, weak, dry little pieces all the way around, and thereby we'll make our way all the way through. But it's grabbed my drill a couple times, and I see that's where the crack in this glass block came from, presumably. It worked out right at the end of the battery pack, so every time the drill grabbed one or two times, we clocked into this glass block, which just couldn't take it. It's cold, and it was right in the center, and it's old, and that's how the cookie crumbles, or the glass block breaketh. Ooh, so there's little really nasty slivers everywhere here now. So quit hitting that, Chezzy. Back to work. We didn't quite get there yesterday, but my specialty parts are supposed to be here later today. I got a clamp tentatively screwed at the back there where it can be spun around and used to hold my drain. Made sure that would be the right size there on another piece of pipe. So that I tested, and it won't hold me up by the elbow too high. It's as low as I could install here, but that'll be low enough, and I'll show you more about that in a second. So let's go down. I got a fresh primer because mine took a dump on me, and we're going to glue the large radius elbow to the bottom of this. Then we're going to hack off this thing, and I got a reducer here to get us from the 2-inch down to the 1.5 over to the wall. I guess I should bring a piece of that. I'll bring that piece of pipe, although that's kind of set up as a drain. So I need a piece of 1.5 that I have somewhere, and then we'll get that built downstairs, and then we can talk water supply. So that worked out well, and I'm on to water supply. This whole thing is like an exercise in making a huge improvement, but not really having my druthers. Still not really having my druthers. I really wanted hot and cold on either side of the drain out, kind of spaced out a bit wider and above, obviously, or pretty typically. But I just couldn't have it that way. This cavity is cold. The cold air is coming in, and I thought I could find it on the 3rd floor because this is balloon framing, and pour some insulation down in there. I know this is insulated, like I said, because we did this window opening and we worked right from here. But the flooring boards are actually sort of capping every wall cavity, even though it's open framing on the 3rd floor. And there's stuff leaning up, and there's detritus on that floor that's like a century or more of bat poo and everything else. I really don't like disturbing it and getting it all over me and bringing it down in the house. That's a different project for a different time. So then I thought, well, I could go on the 2nd floor and I could cut an opening. I could find 2 studs, cut an opening, and take that material out, pour the insulation down, and then put that material back over. Leave it rough for now. I have plans slated for upstairs. No one's going to mind. I was even lazier than that because I figured that if I went above
the drain into one side. They could both be in this insulated cavity, and they'll be better off. I could even fill around them with expanding foam, but I want to be sure that I don't have any leaks first. So it's going to be tough because I need to add the other piece of the 1-inch block on the wall, 1-inch sheathing, believe it or not, or boards, tongue and groove that are on this wall. Needs to go in below that. I broke the top piece off, and I'm using that to hold my stub outs for my water supply. So I drilled a 5/8 hole with a Forstner bit in the locations where I wanted. The 1/2-inch nominal stub outs fit snugly in that, and they'll be held well enough. When I attach this to that stud, that will work by and large for those. And I won't have to do a lot of messing around because you really can't add screws and hold downs or anything else. I wanted the flange type, but they only have those at Home Depot, and I ended up at Lowe's, so I'm going to try and make this work. So they have the copper flange on the other type, and that could be anchored to studs there, and I could have blocked inside, whatever. At this point, this is the route that I'm taking. I drilled a little over. I drilled another Forstner, big 3-inch Forstner opening to the right-hand side of the drain hole as we look at it. So there's room for the packs. And what I'll do is I will push these through to where they're still on the straight section going through the wood, but they're as near to the heat source as possible, and I'll put a Sharpie line there. So once everybody's installed, I should be able to pull them back out till I see a Sharpie line. And see how they fall back in the wall. So I'll make that so that's correct and insulate all around that from here, and then I'll add the bottom piece, and then I could I gotta drill holes in these 3 pieces of wainscot beadboard and reapply those to the best of my ability. I may or may not even bother. We'll see. What was I gonna get? Oh, originally I bought a socket weld male adapter to P-trap to go into this elbow here, which is normally what you do. But because I had to catch enough of the bracket on the face of the wood to put a screw in to hold that vert, I couldn't come toward myself much more here. I couldn't cock it out this way. And with the hole that I drilled at the bottom, that has an elbow in it, and it messes with everything. So I really don't like how shallow these threads end up bottoming out at this 1-inch board. So they'll be 3/8 of an inch into this face if I put it on there. I've run into that situation before. It's a nightmare to try and tighten this nut because it's hiding in the wall covering. So we're going to convert to a female. See? And so the female is going to go over it, and it's going to go over a piece of small pipe. So I'll use a short piece here, and I'll put a short piece in there, and when I smack it all together tightly, it will actually put the thread starting at the face of the beadboard, and that's really where you want to be. I had an elbow with that set up on it already that I had hoped to use here. It just wasn't long enough, and the other piece that was glued up, 1.5-inch elbow that I had a short radius elbow glued on it already, or you can use a long radius elbow, which will reach out farther from a given straight shot. The curve will bring the longer radius will bring the face off of that center line farther. So I'm just trying to use a piece that was already glued up, and I already had this here. I could take this one that I purchased because I didn't have one back, but I'll just leave it. So we've got that floating around the way I have this floating around today. So long story short, that needs to be glued in there, and this needs to be glued on it. Then the opening that I mapped out on this board needs to be cut with a hole saw. And at that point, I need to, you know what I could do? I could put a 1/2-inch crimp. It probably won't fit. I was going to say, if these would fit onto the stub out, yeah, then I could crimp it out here, and then it wouldn't go in any farther, and the over drill, the hole in the beadboard would be bigger than that because it has a nice finishing flange on it, and everything would be hunky-dory. So maybe that's what I'll do, is I'll crimp those and then install all of that. In the end, I want everything to us as much as possible, and then I want insulation on the other side of it. So I think I'll get that all right and install that little block, have the other one ready to go, and then it's probably best to squirt great stuff in there. It'll expand out all around. I'll just see that I haven't lost a lot above. I'll pack in up with the loose so it stops rising, and then I'll pump it full as I can see it with insulation expanding foam. It's going to have the best R value. It's going to hold everything tightly and rigidly beyond that while it sets up, and I think that's the best case scenario. I also need to insulate the glass block on the inside with some 2-inch foam board downstairs and fill cracks in the stone with expanding foam as well. The back of the rim joist where the dryer vent goes out could also get some styrofoam on it, or at least a layer of spray foam. And then this is as close to being in our envelope as possible. And then all I got to do is shut the water off, clip these copper pieces out, pull them out of this cabinet, connect on with the PEX that I left a little bit long down there with some splices and crimp those on so I have water and drainage happening. And then I was going to say I could skip putting those up, but I need to get the valves onto the stub outs and they're pushed to connect, and I really would like to just one and done it. So I was going to cut corners there, but we'll keep going until it looks nice and everything's cleared out, and then we got to drop the sink in, and hopefully our hardware for the garbage disposal showed up today, or we'll just throw the regular drain in for now and come back and do this disposal later. So if you're not careful, the shoemaker's kids have no shoes and the carpenter's house has no sink. You got to get back to it. You got to get it done. This discrepancy, focus, you can see better here, has been an issue for a while. It's actually that edge there that we're looking at. It's kind of black. So I want to pick this piece up to there, and I don't have the ability to really do that. I can't grab and squeeze with a clamp like this. It wants to square out and pull the jaw over onto the piece I'm trying to pull up. So what I need here is inclined plane technology. So I've got some shims, and what we're going to try and do is this is a cobble face frame that my dad's repaired a few times because these cabinets have been installed in a couple of places. But just this piece, where are we here? There it is. Just this piece needs to go up. Just a little bit right here. That needs to get clamped and glued shut there, so I can't be underneath this other piece at all. I need to stay under here on this face frame, which thankfully has got 2 pieces that are supporting it vertically. I'm going to try to pack this up and slide shims together and lift this, and then get some epoxy down in there. Where is it? Get some epoxy into it. Can you dig it? With a little coffee stirrer and some mixing cups, and then we'll get some big kahuna clamps on her and leave it there for a couple hours while we go out and I'm going to get a flange set of these while I can. I monkeyed up I'm still torn on that crimp tool that I got, that M18 PEX B tool. So I crimped these collars on, and the one went well, the other one got kind of monkeyed up. It got kind of pinched right into the ring. I don't likey. So while I can, I'm going to get 2 new ones with a flange, and the flange will probably sit to the back, I think, which will pull these in a little bit farther, whatever. When it's out of there, I'll probably glue the flange to the back of that block of wood or something, but I'll insulate at that time, and I have the ability to cut a little bit. I'll just cut this one right off, put the new ones in, and I have an inch of additional PEX if I need it. It's all the more that I'm going to end up needing. Can't do that over and over again, but I can do it the one time. So I'll just replace these. And then I think I'll get a bag of loose insulation because I can feel the cold air coming out of this cavity on the left. We're on the left-hand side of this cavity that's largely filled with insulation, and I'll add some loose. The rest I'll pour down somewhere from above or push in there one way or another. And I'll just build up as high as I can with the rest of that loose insulation. It'll make me feel a lot better, and I'll get a bag of that. And then we'll put this together. I've got the cover cut and everything ready. You put the pieces in. And then we'll put the sink in and try to get it operational. And by then, this will be cured up. That actually worked really nice. So I packed those over, and I actually ended up underneath the other piece because it ended up a bit low. And putting everybody together, stacked up, he's got this all coplanar. And then I drove the glazier bar in to hold it open onto the left and the right of this seam. And I'm going to get, first and foremost, I'm going to get a lot of epoxy down in there. And then I'm going to pull this out and maybe hope to add a little bit. And then I'll clamp it shut and try to keep it going downward. So I might tape across the top and clamp it shut, which would squelch it more downward instead of the path of least resistance pushing it up and out. And then, of course, it'll need a little work. But this has been waxed, so I expect the epoxy to some degree will come off. And maybe I'll do a little sand and reapply this linseed oil or whatever that we have on top of this and make that disappear. So let's get it glued shut at least. All right, I used the tape, and then once I was clamped and I could see it rippled, you know, where we closed this gap, I pulled it off and wiped any excess with a paper towel. So we've got a real similar sheen, and if it sets up and scrapes off or something, like cabinet scrapes off or sands off, that'll be easy enough to do. If you leave too much epoxy to set up, epoxy's hard, and trying to get a little blob off, you could really easily round over this area and create a heavier witness at the edge of the perfectly straight sink casting. The whole point of this is to bring this counter up to more planar so that the edge is a lot nicer looking and we haven't got a subtle little divot collecting water droplets and pulling them in and down into that crack, which was kind of happening before. So the epoxy has sealed it, and we've pulled it closed and glued it with the epoxy as well. So hopefully this isn't one of the many problems. That I wouldn't use bowling alley as a countertop again. It kind of has an interesting look, but it isn't like butcher top in that the layers aren't glued. They're just nailed. So like when you cross cut and you have a situation like that, it just comes out of there. They're keyed, but you know, these gaps opened, and I didn't have the ability to beat this shut with I didn't go over it with a sledgehammer and beat that stuff shut and glue it. Everywhere you go, as soon as you drive that shut, you open something else because it's very hard and old. You really want a properly glued up butcher top for counter, or a really nice example of bowling alley that's been stabilized and you know it's not going to do this. This was kind of a deal bowling alley. Like, this is what you get. Also, the soap is dripping. Ugh. Well, I'm just cutting the stub outs off with my little close quarters cutter tool. I'm pretty pleased with the way that the locations for these worked out. I think there'll be just enough room to make them look nice. And turn the light on, but the frame rate is a conflict. Ooh, it figured it out. Maybe it won't show up in the video. So anyway, this one is nice and rigid. This one's just a little wiggly, but I think it's going to give it up when the foam sets up. And I used a little bit of goof off. This is a polypropylene nut, so it won't stick to that. And I can scrape on the conduit a little bit. For now, I just got to clean up those ends and put the shutoff valves. And then basically I'm going to set the sink basin in here. I'm pretty sure the rest of this can happen underneath it, but this much I wanted to do from the top down. It isn't all that handy leaning over this. I can just barely reach. Half the time I've been going through the doors anyway. And so I think I've come to the end. I tacked these back up, and this will look fine and dandy for underneath the kitchen cabinet as compared to what was here before. So let's get this thing connected. All right. Just got this stuff on. These are push to connect. So they come with these little vac metallized beauty-em-ups to beautify them. These are, I like a metal flange. Everything just sits there. Looks pretty. I got a 90-degree takeoff to the dishwasher water, hot and hot straight up, and then cold straight up on the right-hand side. And all the pieces went back in their little holes and got brad nailed in, or finished stapled, crown stapled. So now all I got to make sure I have is a dishwasher connection on the... Actually, I think that goes to the garbage grinder, but that came in. The garbage disposal flange came in. This box flange will sit over the adapter nut. Real nice. Like that. And Bob's your uncle there. I got an ABS P-trap because it's black, and I think it'll look sharp. So how are we doing this thing? Well, I've also got 100% silicone, water ready in 30 minutes, silicone 2, mold resistant. And I'm just about to be smart. I fixed this leading edge yesterday. I've lightly sanded all around. I'm going to wipe this off with probably alcohol. And then I'm going to grab the sink, which has got the faucet and our new disposal button. attached. And these are knockouts. You can re-drill this hole with a expensive diamond core bit if you want to measure and make sure you get the right one that'll fit in there without a lead center hole and deal with the dust everywhere. Or you can just blast one of these marks with a punch, and most of that will come out of there as a plug. This was the bottom side. So then the rest around the opening needs to be chipped down and curve filed, and that's what I did quickly, and it came out great. Anyway, this is attached well, and the faucet's attached well. Then I took everybody's little tail and went through the drain hole so it's not clattering around in the way, because that makes it hard when you walk in here holding this with both hands and try to put it in that opening. I'm going to put it in the opening, measure all around, slide it all around, see that it looks perfect, and then I'm going to put some very light little pencil marks and take it away. And then I'll put my caulk bead on the counter just inside of that pencil mark, and then I'll carefully come back with this. And another thing, with these being tucked in, they won't get caulk smeared all over them and get all frigged up. I'll wipe the bottom edge of this with alcohol as well, and my hands will have it on there from doing it. And we'll come in and we'll try to get right back to the pencil mark kind of instantly or immediately. And hopefully I won't overdo the caulk bead, and not installing it vertically or underneath something and trying to put it on the bottom of that sink should allow me to keep it consistent in size, very peaceful, smooth, unbroken, clean, so that the squish factor being relatively equal, then one clean little zwoop with my finger should be all we need, hopefully. If you start going back for more silicone, you just put everywhere you touch, you're putting the silicone there. So I really just like to go, less is more, and hopefully that, very small little bead and working top down will make that easier. So let's try and do it now. Let's try to be as good as we say we are.
Come on.
We're just going to make sure there aren't any Christmas trees that we should think about cutting down before we go back for the one that was back in the barn. Plus, it's nice to get out and walk, especially when you've only been around 19 months. Right, Hanky?
Thank you.
Little Hanky.
Thank you.
Hi. What you got?
What's it?
There's a mitten and snow.
Boogers.
Snow. Boogers.
Here we go, boogers. I don't know. Boogers.
That's not boogers, that's snow. Merry Christmas 2025. May there be a 2026.
Yeah. Now he's eating it.
What are you doing? Cold.
The yellow snow. All right, let's go. Want to hold my hand? Yeah. Thank you.
There it is. Set to hot. Just turn it on. That's cold. Anywhere in between, you just leave it. You can just turn it on, which is nice. Disposal. Nice and quiet. The disposal surround doesn't have a little registration in it for the basket, which otherwise I've always used interchangeably with the opening to a disposal versus another like ordinary drain opening. You get this thing too, which is ostensibly you wouldn't get fruit flies or somebody else living in there if you left it like that daily in the summertime or what have you. So, or maybe you still would, I don't know, or something, I don't know. This,
isn't to push things in or anything. It's just a different full closure, and it'll hold water pressure, obviously, so you can run the sink basin full with that. Anyway, I think of this as being what you normally have in there, just to keep anything from accidentally going into the disposal, or running it with water flowing and carrying something into, like silverware or something, wouldn't be good. So anyway, I don't know. I'm gonna have to see if somebody else offers something that does have that registration in a similar enough color, and I don't know if that annoys me enough. But functionality wise, it's got the 2 different sprays, and you can take that anywhere, and then you can give it a power boost. Looks like you get, or aeration. No, it just seems like more water pressure. So you restrict it all the time, and that gives you everything she's got, Captain. And under here, my correctly sized under cabinet tray hasn't arrived yet. This is the one I got for upstairs, which also has water and drain through the base of the cabinet, and it makes it annoying. If you were to cut openings in the mat, then it would just drain. The whole point of this is to catch any drips and get ahead of a problem if you can. In any case, I got the right size one, which will clean this up visually a lot, I hope. And otherwise, I needed a little more than what came in the pack for this ABS black drain to the wall. I needed this stuff from my inventory. PVC, just down tube, like 3 or 4 inch piece, cut back from what you'd probably buy a 6 and cut it down. So I gotta see if I can get a black version of 1.5 inch tailpiece, I think, or extension, whatever they call that section. And the wire to the garbage disposal could be way shorter and more, and the same with the one that plugs into the control box. That could be pulled into the box like I did at Martin's for the kitchen move or whatever, kitchen relocation. Anyway, the water valves and stuff look nice, hopefully, at the back, and go up to the faucet, and everything's kosher. Overcut through the wainscot board a little bit on the right hand side for the drain opening over here. I had the piece saved. I was just going to glue it back in. Cut it a little, I used the bandsaw because I'm here working at home, and I was going to put a little sliver back in there right in this position, but obviously when the project comes back into focus and you back away a little bit from where you're viewing it, and you just close the door basically on that and move on to the next project. For now, it is a lot better than it was, and most importantly, Katie Merrill can go back to her alchemy, her food voodoo that she do so well. Can't hold that up at all, and this was for her. I wanted to do it as cheaply as I could. I think I ended up with $100 for this, $200 for that. That's $3. This was $75 basically. That was included, but this was another, I want to say $75 after I got it here. So that's $150, and it was trying to keep it under $500. The ABS drain, I had this dish disposal already. I ordered that mat, and those push to connect valves I bought. The stub outs, 2 sets of copper stub outs after I monkeyed to set up, a box flange, and a couple flanges at the wall for the water supply, and a couple pieces of styrofoam and cans of expanding foam to finish up with in the basement. So I think I did it. And it would have normally been in material cost, between the faucet and this would have been over $1,000 and $1,500 or something. So 1/3 the material cost, and obviously I'm free, or I was at it for about, so far, genuine hours, 25 or 30 hours. So that's $2,500, $30,000 for, say 4 and 2,000 worth of material costs. Roughly, it's a $6,000 project to have me come to your house and do whatever happened here. So I think we made out pretty cheaply, even if it would have only been $3,000 or $4,000 from somebody else. $500, new premium quality sink. Okay. Merry Christmas. So I wasn't sure if I was going to upload the sink project to my YouTube channel, but I touched on costs and stuff, costs to outside customers versus our costs for just the materials and having things around. So, of course, I meant 3,000, not 30,000 there at the end, just previously. But when I was summarizing the costs, a lot of that has to do with the fact that I have a lot of inventory. But obviously, the biggest factor is my time isn't paid when I'm working on my own project. So I'm $100 an hour. But why is that? I certainly don't pay myself $100 an hour. I'm lucky if I pay myself $25 an hour because we have something called overhead. This is the scene after I'm done with that project. I've got to come through here and get my 20 feet easily. This is 20 feet of bench cleared off. There's some things on the floor. There's bench work that was happening here and some bench work that was happening there. So I had to transplant the power cord from one garbage disposal to the other. I'm going to have to figure out a way to get that last little down tube that I need possibly out of this guy right here, this little stretch, and a couple of the corresponding nuts and stuff that came on another set of this, just to get it all to be black under there if that's important. This is that registration that I was talking about, this other drain having that little demarcation there holds that basket, so I can look into that situation potentially. Something else, a couple other screwdriver tips and stuff there. But here's all the Kohler stuff that came with various extracurricular parts and stuff to make sure everything would zip in together. I have another high-end basket and stuff here, just as a conversation while we're right here. This is another Kohler with a nice basket that goes into it. I mean, the quality here versus what you're going to go get at the box store. This is a real deal. This is the block off plate in the event that you already had 2 8-inch on center holes in that sink, which we didn't have, which I was excited about. But it is why I put the button for the disposal to the left, and it could have been to the right, what have you. But in the future, if someone wanted to change the sink configuration and didn't want that button there, they'd at least be able to go to a bridge faucet potentially, or a different faucet, rather than putting using the further knockout and having a commitment there. So we got gaskets and stuff here. This is the full Kohler kit. This is $185 plus tax, shipping, and handling and stuff after that. And they were selling the button, which I couldn't be sure is the only thing that I needed, because it's the only thing in the photograph or the image with the listing anywhere you go online is just this, the escutcheon button portion that you see. The rest of it, that was included. And so that's all. I was thinking I would have to just try to get this thing onto the guts of the button that we already had. But no, of course, you get this whole thing with the vacuum tube. You get this stuff here on the left with just the button. And so that will work no problem. That's still $65 plus shipping and handling for the button. But this can go back. But having to reach out and get that to start with to make sure I had everything I needed to close this out and start working, get it to function. I had to stay ahead of the game there. I have another faucet that we considered that I don't know where to go with. I got to pack that back up, and there's the accoutrement there. The old water supply has got to get cleaned out and thrown out. All the tooling we had, this wasn't a part of it, nor was this. But I had to sand around the edges of the countertop. I had obviously some PPE that I was wearing when I was dealing with the insulation at least. The older stub outs, I had some C-clamps to hold that countertop shut, and I got the epoxy in there to glue it with all of that. I got some expanding foam on my razor scraper. Ooh, nice. Just be careful. But that I had to have. This is something I had from inventory. That's the wrong adapter nut, but the lights that I had to see everything. Gluing. I had composite shims to get that counter evened out. High-end carbide or TIN coated oscillating tool blades. More headlamps. A close quarters trimmer, copper cutter. So you're not going to get in there unless with the power cutter, which I do have. And I have a crimp tool, for better or worse. I still haven't decided if I love it. A little sawzall, full-size sawzall's hiding around here somewhere. Circular saw to get into the wall, more lighting.
extension to reach past everything and get a screw into a couple positions where you're never getting it without a real long ass extension. Some nice snips to cut the flange on the copper flanged stub outs a little bit because they were a little bit overly long. Brush for cleaning them off and getting the push to connect valves ready. Those just there. I don't normally, this is a mess typically, but screwdriver guns, obviously, drill guns, obviously, more snips, crescent wrench, file to clean up the opening in the sink, and a punch and a hammer for that. I have some high-tech coated screws, small T10 drive. These are T25 flange coated screws here. I think these are even T15 drive, but they were real short. I used those somewhere else. More light. I had to have a crown stapler to put the beadboard back in the wall. Didn't end up with the jigsaw using that. I had one flange from Ace, but I got two from Lowe's that were a little different and used those. This isn't the piece that I was looking for. It's the other one that must have gotten vacuumed up. Dead blow hammer, and then obviously a bunch of batteries, tape measures. Here's that full-size Sawzall. And I used the bandsaw to cut that opening. I had a vacuum cleaner. I had the full-size shop vac, and obviously all the hand tools and stuff in a bag of insulation. And none of this has been put back in order or organized back into the tooling and taken out of the job site because I can kind of, quit in the middle right here and then come back and do that. I'll do that today. Oh, we had some more hole saws. This is all stuff that went to the basement. So self-driving Forstner, hole saw arbor, cat's paw, couple glazier bars. There's the hammer and a square, some high-end carbide, expensive Wrecker nitrous Sawzall blade. Those are 15 or 20 bucks each. There's a couple in here. Glues. That ended up being for CPVC, so I didn't use that, the yellow. But, yeah. Drill gun. Heavy-duty extension. There's another heavy-duty extension here to get up in there. And that was lucky to use that gun because I popped my hole saw, or my hole hog, 90-degree angle drill. My super hog is dead from a few years ago. Now, whole hog has just died on this project, so I've got a pretty major couple $200-300 repair coming for that drill gun, and that allows me to complete a project like that within a few days' time, pecking away at it before and after other meetings and inspections and estimates and family chores and responsibilities and stuff this time of year. So I still need to complete a few things. The dishwasher water started leaking as soon as I tightened it back up to the shutoff, so it's been dripping. I got the new mat coming today, but these are how the costs add up, because not only was there time in completing this to where it can be used on this side, I got to go back into the basement and insulate to the best of my ability to the outside, to the rim joist, and add styrofoam board that I've got in here and expanding foam. Here's the cans waiting for that. Here's I have scraps, but I don't have any 1-inch scraps, so I got some 1-inch in the event that I wish I had some of that, because that's the difficult way to carve down thicker foam, isn't a pain in the butt otherwise. So I got that to do yet. And so, right, you end up with 30 or 40 hours worth of professional time, meaning the individual that can go about it pretty quickly and effectively, but all of this overhead, all these costs that I have to make sure that when I'm working, I'm bringing in income that is there in the event that things break down, or that I need to get new tooling, or I need to expand the operation, or have to have access to all of this stuff to get the project done. Most of which you weren't going any farther without, believe it or not. I had to countersink holes in that existing tongue and groove layer of boards on the wall so that the screws that I used didn't just explode them. They cracked anyway because I came and went with them so many times, so I had to epoxy glue them back together again. Yeah, and a lot of this stuff has come into the limelight and it's been seen online in the DIY community in the past 10 years, but I knew about this stuff previously from an education and experience with education, and in the field I gained a lot of experience that wasn't as easy to share around and articulate as it is now. It's easier every day, but I come at this from having made a huge investment previously into becoming comfortable with all this different stuff. that you need to know about to make effective use of your time. So just because it's a little more available and a little less costly today, it doesn't change the fact that I had to pay up front for that. So we got to get the shop cleaned up. We got to finish the project in total, close out that basement work, get it all insulated and safe to the best of our ability. And then we've truly finished. And, you know, that's where the costs come from. For me to bring all this stuff out, know what you need to get the job done at your house, show up with all of it, and get through it back and forth without making a huge mess of the house. Close it up, pack all this stuff out, and get it back to zero. So I'm ready to start the clock for another customer. That's the total cost to a given customer. Unpack everything to the site, utilize it, complete the job, pack it all back up again, and be ready to go to the next site. That's the timeline of the project. So there's a little behind the scenes regarding costs, time, and energy. And now I've reminded myself of how much more there is before I'm truly done, and I'm kind of bummed out. So I guess it's time to get back to it.